Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from JessCrafts.com, and today I'm going to be showing you a card that features the bokeh stamping technique and some stamps from Gerda Steiner Designs. So to create this bokeh stamping background, I'm going to start by blending on some Distress ink over a stitched rectangle panel from Lawn Fawn. I'm using 110 pound white cardstock from Georgia Pacific, and I'm using the Peacock Feathers, Evergreen Bough, and Cracked Pistachio Distress inks. These are all different versions of blue-green colors, with the Evergreen Bough being the most green, then the Cracked Pistachio, and finally the Peacock Feathers, which has a lot of blue and is much more of a teal color. I'm adding the different colors throughout the card. I don't want to create an ombre effect where I fade from one color to the next. Instead, I just want to lay down a variation of color, as this will create a base for the bokeh look. And so I added first the Peacock Feathers in 3 spots, then filled in the Evergreen Bough, so there was always a little bit of Evergreen Bough touching where the Peacock Feathers was already laid down, and then filled in what was left with the Cracked Pistachio. Once I had a layer down of each color, I came back in with the Peacock Feathers and blended it all out so that every surface was colored. Now that I have just a general blending of ink everywhere, I'm going to go back with the round dauber from Tim Holtz and get a lot of ink onto the dauber in a particular color, and then place it down and make like a kind of a swirling motion to create a large dot of color. And I'm going to cover most of the surface in large dots of color with some overlap, but I'm trying to create the circles that are part of the bokeh effect, and I'm trying to mix it up to make sure there's a little bit of each. Then I dry the entire panel, and I'm coming in with Hero Arts white pigment ink. And it's important to completely dry the panel from the Distress inks, as you will get then a blending of the colors, which isn't quite what I'm looking for. Hero Arts is a pretty solid white stamping ink, and I'm just taking a clean foam pad and the same round Distress ink blending tool and doing the same technique where I'm getting a lot of ink on it, pressing it down, doing a little bit of a swirl motion, and creating those large dots. With the pigment ink, it does not dry very quickly, and so it's going to be super important that you dry it with a heat gun so that you do not get spreading and you have those nice clear round areas. Once I've created my bokeh panel, I'm ready to do some stamping. I decided to turn this into a birthday card using the Gerda Steiner's Late But With Love clear stamp set. It includes some great birthday images in it, and it includes this really adorable turtle and snail image, but I won't actually be using either of those today. I wanted to show a different look. If you're not as into the cutesy animals, or the recipient of this particular card isn't, I wanted to show you that you could get a different kind of look with this same stamp set. And I'm thinking about stamping the balloons, and I decide though that I don't want them to be solid. Instead, I want to stamp them on vellum so they have that transparent feeling of an actual balloon. And I wasn't sure how this would work, but I decided to just to try some Distress stain in Peacock Feathers over vellum and see that if I dried it, would that stay to color the vellum. I knew that Copic markers would work if the Distress stain did not, but just in order to keep the color palette pretty similar and create a tone-on-tone effect, I wanted to use the Distress palette. I laid the color all over the vellum and dried it, and it actually stayed perfectly once I did hit it with the heat gun. It does curl up a little bit at first, but as you continue to dry it, it will flatten back out again. Then I applied a piece of solid adhesive tape, such as score tape, all over the vellum panel, so that way when I peel the tape, you won't see any of the adhesive because it'll be consistently across the entire balloon. I am stamping 4 different balloons. I only intend to use 3, but I wanted an extra just in case I smear anything or make a mistake. And I'm going to fussy cut those out. I stamped with archival jet black ink because once it's dry it will be permanent even on vellum. Then I took the cupcake and candle images and I stamped those just on, again, the 110-pound Georgia-Pacific cardstock, and I'll be coloring those with Copic markers. I stamped it with the MFT Black Licorice Hybrid ink. I'm using some pinks because I thought that the pink and teal would look really good together. A lot of times I'll use teal with orange, but I was looking for a more soft look, and given that the teals generally leaned towards the greens with that cracked pistachio and evergreen bough, green and red are opposite on the color wheel, but because I'm not going quite to green, I didn't go quite to red, and I pulled back to the pink color. And so that's kind of how I chose my colors there. I am going to also fussy cut out the candle and the cupcake. Now fussy cutting out that candle was a bit tricky. It is a very tiny flame in the end, but I think it's worth it to create a truly special card. And I did stamp the candle down onto my background paper to give me an idea of where I would actually want to place it. Once I have the little cupcake focal point arranged, I'm ready to work on the sentiment and balloon focal point that will balance it out. I'm going to put the balloons and the sentiment in the top left and the cupcake in the bottom right to create that natural flow from the top left to the bottom right that visually is appealing because of the way that we read from the top left to the bottom right. And I'm creating a scene or cluster of 3 of the balloons because odds look appealing to the eye. And I decide to arrange them such that the balloon detail isn't too lost. Like, I don't want to cover up all of the balloon ends because I don't want it to just look like more bokeh circles. I want it to stand out a little bit more, but again, not too much because I use the vellum, and so you can even kind of see that bokeh through them, and it creates more of that feeling of being a balloon without going so far as to use glossy accents. I decided to draw in my own balloon strings. There are balloon strings included in the stamp set, but I felt that drawing my own would be a little bit more appropriate for this particular card because I wanted some different lengths and I wanted more of a straight balloon string. I stamped this Happy Birthday, Let's Celebrate sentiment from Sophie Sentiments from Lawn Fawn, and I used the same Copic markers that I used to color the cupcake to color those 2 sentiment panels. I made one darker and one lighter. I felt like with just the one sentiment panel, the pink was a little bit unbalanced, and also I didn't get the feeling of fullness on the card that I was looking for. So I went with the 2 panels, and this basically creates 3 areas of pink on the card and balances things out a little more visually appealing. I decided that I wanted to use some sequins, and I have these sequins from My Style Stamps. This is the Bahama Blue. These will be released this coming Saturday, and what I really like about these sequins is how shiny they are. They're iridescent, they catch the light, and even though they're blue, they have hints of other colors like a slight green to it, and so it really matched the color palette today. And I thought they looked better than the pink sequins because I wanted the teal to be the overall dominant color in this instance. And so I just made 3 gatherings of 3 sequins in a visual triangle across the card. I also created my own custom pink mat to place this card panel on top of. You see me do this before if you watch my other YouTube videos. I just take the Copic markers and scribble along all 4 edges so that it looks like I have a coordinating piece of pink solid cardstock behind it, but I don't actually. It's just a piece that I created, and I only have the color on the sides there, and that helps to really finally tie in all of the pink, and my card is finished. If you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in seeing more crafty videos, you can subscribe to my channel. I'm going to leave you links to the products in the video description below, including this stamp set from Gerda Steiner Designs. Thanks for watching. Bye!